Welcome to the Ventis MX4 online training module number 9. In this module, we will be discussing the VCal Calibration Station. The VCal Station features two-button operation, making it very easy to operate. With the VCal, the user can quickly calibrate or perform a functional test on the Ventis MX4. This allows the user to easily maintain the Ventis MX4 fleet. There are two configurations of the VCal station. One accepts the diffusion model only, while the other accepts the aspirated version. First, I would like to do a walk around of the VCal station. First, you will see the reservoir where the user must insert the Ventis MX4 in order for the VCal station to perform any of its operations. The progress lights will alert the user to the status of the instrument that is currently docked. The bump test button, which allows the user to force a bump test on the Ventis MX4 that is inserted into the reservoir. The calibrate button, which allows the user to force a calibration on the Ventis MX4 that is inserted into the reservoir. Next is the display, which allows the user to easily see which state the VCal station is currently in. The instrument door cover must be opened to insert the Ventis MX4 and must be closed when the Ventis MX4 is inserted into the reservoir. On the back of the VCal is a USB data link connection to connect to a computer. Here we have the fresh air port, the calibration port for connecting calibration gas, 12-volt DC power supply connection, and the printer port connection to connect to a printer. To prepare your VCal for powering up, ensure the proper calibration gas is connected to the calibration gas port. The VCal requires the use of a demand flow regulator connected to the calibration gas bottle. A lure fitting will be needed to attach the calibration gas to the calibration inlet port. Once powering the VCal for use, the VCal will cycle through a few screens before it's ready to use. The first screen shows the software version. The next screen is a warm-up screen. The next screen is the display check for numeric characters. The next screen is a display check for alpha characters. The next screen will verify the LEDs. First, the green LED. Next, the amber LED. And next, the red LED. Next is testing all three LEDs simultaneously. The next screen is checking current screen. You will hear the VCal's pump operating. Next is checking clock. The VCal will show the date and time on the screen. Next, the VCal will do an EEPROM test. The VCal will then show ready on the display. The user can now place the Ventis MX4 in the reservoir of the cal station. The VCal utilizes three LEDs to indicate the instrument status. The green LED indicates that the instrument has finished its forced events and is ready to use. The amber LED indicates that the instrument is communicating with the VCal station. Do not remove until a green LED indication. The amber LED could also indicate that the Ventis MX4's batteries are charging. The red LED indicates that the VCal was unable to complete its forced events. Do not use the instrument until corrective action is taken. This video will show you how to insert the Ventis MX4 aspirated unit into the VCal. Open the pump door, slide the instrument in to the VCal, and close the pump door. This video will show you how to insert a diffusion Ventis MX4 into the VCal. Slide the instrument into the VCal station and flip down the diffusion lid. Before a bump test can be performed, the Ventis MX4 must be inserted into the VCal reservoir. Press the bump button for 3 seconds, then release to initiate a bump test. The VCal's display will toggle between warming up and Ventis MX4. After the warm-up period, the VCal's display will show bump in progress. The display will toggle between bump in progress and the sensor type being tested, along with its bump gas concentration. The display will then toggle between bump in progress and the next sensor being tested, as well as its bump gas concentration. The display will then toggle between bump in progress and the sensor being tested next, as well as its bump gas concentration. And finally, the display will toggle between bump in progress and the last sensor type being bump tested, as well as its bump gas concentration. After the bump test is finished, the VCal will show bump pass on the display with a green LED. If the bump test failed, the VCal will show bump fail on the display with a red LED. This video will walk you through the bump test procedure of the VCal. With the Ventis MX4 inserted into the VCal, press and hold the bump button for approximately 3 seconds. The VCal will turn the instrument on and the display will toggle between warming up and Ventis MX4. The first sensor to receive a bump test will be shown on the display, along with its bump gas. Also, it will toggle between bump and progress. Once the first sensor is completed, the next sensor to receive bump gas will be displayed on the screen, and bump in progress will also be shown. This process will be repeated for the remaining sensors to be bump tested. Upon completion of the last sensor, a successful bump test will display a green LED with the VCal's display showing pass. If any of the sensors failed their bump test, then the red LED will be illuminated with the VCal's display showing failed. At that time, a full calibration of the instrument will need to be accomplished. A printer may also be connected to the VCal to print a hard copy of the results of the bump test. To perform a calibration of Ventis MX4, insert the Ventis MX4 into the VCal reservoir. After inserting the Ventis MX4, press and hold the Calibrate button for 3 seconds. The VCal display will toggle between warming up and Ventis MX4. After the warm-up period, the VCal's display will show 0 in progress. After the instrument has zeroed, the display will show cal in progress. The display will then toggle between cal in progress and the sensor type being calibrated, as well as its calibration gas concentration. The display will then toggle between cal in progress and the next sensor type being calibrated. The display will then toggle between cal in progress and the next sensor type being calibrated. And lastly, the display will then toggle between cal in progress and the last sensor type being calibrated. After calibration is finished, the VCal will show cal pass on the display with a green LED. If the calibration failed, the VCal will show cal fail on a display with a red LED. Do not use the instrument until corrective actions are taken. This video will walk you through the calibration of the VCal. With the Ventis MX4 installed into the VCal, press and hold the Calibrate button for approximately 3 seconds. The VCal will turn the instrument on and the display will toggle between warming up and Ventis MX4. After the warm-up, the VCal will zero the instrument. Zero in progress will be displayed on the screen. After the zeroing process, cal in progress will be displayed on the VCal screen. At this time, all sensors are being calibrated simultaneously. Once the calibration is completed, a successful calibration will display a solid illuminated green LED with the VCal's display showing pass. If any of the sensors failed their calibration, then a red LED will be illuminated with the VCal's display showing fail. At that time, a corrective action will need to be accomplished. A printer may be connected to the VCal. A hard copy of the results will be printed from the printer. The VCal can be connected to a printer for printing the results of a bump test or a calibration. After the calibration or bump test, the printer will automatically print the results. let's do a brief walk around of the front of the printer. The paper access door for installing or replacing the paper roll. The paper receipt reservoir where the printed results will appear. The paper feed button is to feed the paper into the printer or to provide a line feed. The paper out LED indicator. The print LED indicator. And the power LED indicator. Now let's look at the back of the printer. The printer cable port to connect to the VCal. Let's take a look at the example of a bump test printout. Here we have the VCal software version number, current date and time, instrument serial number, software version number, hardware version number, your bump test results, sensor number and type, gas reading of the first sensor, calibration gas concentration applied, your high and low alarm settings, first sensor bump test results. Here you have a space to enter your cylinder lot number post printout. And lastly, a space to enter the technician's initials. Let's take a look at an example of a calibration printout. The VCal software version number, current date and time, the instrument serial number, software version number, the hardware version number, your calibration's results passed or failed, sensor number and type, your span reserve, calibration gas concentration, instrument high and low alarm set points, your first sensor calibration results, your next calibration due date, a space to enter your cylinder lot number, and a space to enter the technician's initials. Now we'll take a look at how to set up the VCal. By pressing the bump test button and the calibrate button simultaneously, the user can access these setup screens. The first of these screens is the print events. Pressing the calibrate button will allow the user to print the 15 alarm events that are stored in the Ventis MX4 that is docked in your VCal. From this screen, pressing the calibrate button will initiate the printing of the 15 events. Pressing the bump button will exit the user from printing the alarm events. Pressing the bump button from the alarm event screen will page the user to the next setup option in the VCal. The next option is Print Buffer. This option allows the user to print all data that is stored in the memory of the VCal. Pressing the Calibrate button will print that buffer. Pressing the Calibrate button again will initiate the print. Pressing the Bump button will exit the user from printing the buffer. Pressing the Bump button from the Print Buffer screen will page the user to the next option in the VCal. The next option is Clear Buffer. This option allows the user to clear all data stored in the memory of the VCal by pressing the Calibrate button. Pressing the Calibrate button again will initiate the clearing of the data. Pressing the Bump button will exit the user from clearing the data. Pressing the Bump button from the Clear Buffer screen will page the user to the next VCal option. The next option is Cal Days. This option allows the user to change the schedule of calibration in days for the VCal by pressing the calibration button. Pressing the bump button allows the user to schedule the calibration in days from 0 to 365. Here the calibration in days has been set to 300. Pressing the calibrate button will enter that schedule into the VCal. The next option is Set Date screen. This allows the user to set the correct date in the VCal. Pressing the calibrate button will allow the user to set the date and time in the VCal. After pressing the calibrate button, the month will be displayed. Pressing the bump button will allow the user to change the value for the month. Once the correct month is adjusted, pressing the calibrate button will enter that value into the VCal. The next screen is to set the current day of the month. Pressing the bump button will allow the user to set the correct day. Once the correct day is adjusted, pressing the calibrate button will enter that value into the VCal. The next screen is to set the current year. Pressing the bump button will allow the user to set the correct year. Once the correct year is adjusted, pressing the calibrate button will enter that value into the VCal. The next screen is to set the current hour. Pressing the bump button will allow the user to set the correct hour. Once the correct hour is adjusted, pressing the calibrate button will enter that value into the VCal. The next screen is to set the current minutes. Pressing the bump button will allow the user to set the correct minutes. Once the correct minutes are adjusted, pressing the calibrate button will enter that value into the VCal. The next option is Set Language. This option allows the user to change the language seen on the display of the VCal. Pressing the calibrate button allows the user to select different languages in the VCal. After pressing the calibrate button, the first language you will see is English. Pressing the bump button will allow the user to scroll the list of available languages. Pressing the bump button, the second language is Spanish. Pressing the bump button, and the next language is French. And pressing the bump button will show the last language, which is German. Once the user has selected the correct language, press the calibrate button to enter that language for the VCal. The next option is System Check. This option allows the user to force the VCal to do a self-test. Pressing the calibrate button will initiate the system check. After completion of the system check, the results will be displayed on the screen. The next option is the Exit option. Pressing the bump button will allow the user to page back through the VCal setup screens. The Calibrate button will allow the user to exit the VCal setup screens. After pressing the Calibrate button from the exit screen, the VCal's display will return to the Ready screen.